Hi guys, it seems the Tories are doubling down on the idea that they left the economy in a positive situation. This of course requires a massive amount of cherry picking of data and focusing on aspects like inflation and not on the actual situation faced by public services, small and medium-sized businesses, local authorities and of course ordinary people. Laura Trott, a former minister in Rishi Sunak's administration here, was trying to convince the public that her government had turned things around, and Labour risks messing up the great work that they had achieved.
Is the economy growing in a way that you can say your kids will be better off than you were? And we lost that under the last 14 years. Yes, all those foundations are in place.
G7. We've got the fastest rate of growth in the G7.
We can repeat these arguments from the election, Laura, but obviously you know that's from population growth from 2010. That was what your record was. Was the economy growing more strongly per head the real measure of success? No, your record was not good on that. And I think, to be honest, that was a fundamental part of the defeat. But clearly, if we're going to see an economy that gives people the living standards that they want, it's got to be better than it was in the last 14 years. That's our belief. That's what we think we can deliver with the measures we're putting forward. I understand the Conservative Party, quite rightly, you'll want to defend your record, but I think your failure in that area was fundamental to the election.
But there's a factual point, Jonathan, that this year we've had the fastest rate of growth in the G7.
Yeah, but you are obviously being judged, or were judged, on your record over 14 years, which was historically poor by British economic standards and poor by comparative standards. So, I mean, by all means, still fight it. But I think you've got to understand how people feel, Laura, about how this was a parliament where at the end of the last parliament, people were worse off than they were at the beginning. And that is significant. And that's got to change. And that means building homes, clean energy, respect in the workplace, working with business to deliver. You know, we've got the lowest business investment in the G7. That's what I've got to try and fix. I think, it's only my advice, but the Conservative Party, rather than fight the last battle, maybe think about what needs to change and support us where we're getting it right.
No, it's what is really important, and we will support you where you are getting things right, and there are aspects in the King's Speech today that we will support, like Martin's Law, like the continuation of the ban on smoking. But I think it is really vital to understand the economic inheritance that you've got. We've taken some really difficult decisions after two serious global events in terms of COVID and in terms of Putin's illegal war in Ukraine and the impact that had on cost of living. And we had to spend money, we had to spend the money to do that. And as a result of the difficult decisions we've made, we have an economy which is the fastest growing in the G7. We've got inflation back to target.
You're saying the inheritance is strong because I think objectively, Laura, you're just not going to get away with that.
Look at the comparison to 2010. Look at the comparison to 2010, right?
Well, hang on,
in terms of the deficit,
there was a global financial crisis before 2010.
Yes, we've had two of those.
So what you're saying is when you inherited...
Oh my goodness. What is wrong with these people? I keep saying a number of things. First of all, perception is the most important thing in politics. And the Conservatives lost the last election because the public did not perceive any improvement in the economy. Now, if you want to cherry pick and say, look, we had the fastest growing economy in the G7. Okay, what was the baseline? Why was it the fastest growing? Was it because it started off at a much lower level than other G7 economies? When you talk about inflation, is this impacting people's lives in a positive way? Like, once again, you're saying when inflation was high, nothing to do with us, then as inflation came down, we do a victory lap. Like, there's no point arguing about how great things were before. Did some things improve? Probably in the last number of years when Rishi Sunak took over. Took over from whom? From Liz Truss, another Tory Prime Minister. And who did she take over from? Boris Johnson. And what did Boris Johnson do to improve the cost of living crisis? Sweet FA. So you try and run on your record of the last 2 years. And of course, no mention of Brexit here. No mention of Liz Truss at all. They just focus on, of course, the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. And I think Labour need to call this out as well. They need to say, wait a minute, why are you not talking about Brexit? Why are you not talking about Liz frigging Truss? It's like... Liz Truss cost the Tories 6 percentage points. So when Laura Trott and others try to sell this idea that, well, you know, we fixed everything was improving, and then you took over, it needs to be called out. You're cherry-picking data. You're ignoring the damage that your party did. Yes, you tried to claw back some of that growth. You try to undo some of the damage by replacing Liz Truss with Rishi Sunak. Did it improve people's lives? Well, not to a level where they actually were convinced that they wanted more of the Conservatives. So they booted you out. Conservatives booted you out. Some people may come back. But this argument of we left the economy in a great state. What parts of the economy are you talking about? Because public services are crumbling. Schools are literally crumbling. Hospitals, people are being treated on trolleys, in some cases outside hospitals. And there isn't even a winter crisis yet. It's a disaster. You have left the economy in a disaster, the state of the nation in a disaster. Raw sewage being pumped into rivers and lakes, that's been dealt with, or starting to be dealt with now. There's a huge amount of work to be done. You don't get to do a victory lap. You may try and convince the public of this, and unfortunately some aspects of the public will be convinced by this. But it's important for Labour, I think, going forward, is to highlight the two other issues that the Tories don't want to talk about: Liz Truss and Brexit. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.